Thanks so much, Hillel, and thank you to UN Watch for having me. I'm an Israeli, so as an Israeli, obviously, I feel very strongly about these events. Personally, I also know very well one of the hostages, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was kidnapped from the Nova Festival, is the son of my good friends, Rachel and John. I've known Hirsch since he was 9 years old, 10 years old. I was at his bar mitzvah. He was the last person I said goodbye to at synagogue on October 6th. Him and his parents were the last people I said goodbye to. So obviously this is very hard for me as well, just thinking about them. And also the boy that he was with, Aner Shapira, I'm also friends with his parents as well. So this is something that has affected every person in Israel. People don't understand what a small country it is. Every single person in Israel knows somebody who has been impacted horribly by the events of October 7th. But putting on my lawyer hat and my NGO monitor hat, we need to talk about the international community's reaction to the hostages because, especially as of late, they are really an afterthought. I sat through the debate yesterday with Francesca Albanese, also the item 2 debate on accountability that occurred earlier in the session, and as well as the item 7 debate, and you heard little to nothing about the hostages. The crime of taking hostages is a grave international crime. It is a jus cogens norm, meaning it is one of the highest levels of crime. It is prohibited in both treaty law and customary international law. It is described as a grave breach in the Geneva Conventions and the protocols. There is an international convention, the 1979 Convention against the taking of hostages. And these are all very strong legal prohibitions that we did not hear one word about in these debates. The rights of the hostages languishing, being tortured, sexually assaulted every day in Gaza is completely absent from the discussion. It is solely, what I heard today and yesterday was atrocious, solely focused on Israel, libelous claims of genocide, forced starvation, and yet we hear nothing about these people, these 135 people that we know are still in Gaza, what is happening to them, their rights being violated 24/7. This is not a subject of debate, and it's a disgrace. And actually, I do want to call out, I have been attending some of the many side events that we've been having in this building of all the various Palestinian NGOs where the rapporteurs come, and the room is full of people, full of representatives from European countries, and I don't see any representative of a European country in this room right now, and I also find that disgraceful. Where is the international community advocating for the rights, the human rights, the legal rights of the hostages in Gaza? So this is a shame on everybody. And as those of us who do care, who did take the time to come and listen to the side event today, to hear the testimonies of people who have suffered from October 7th, I would hope that you could serve as advocates also on their behalf. Now, briefly, I also just want to mention the issue of Al-Shifa Hospital, because that's something that's been a debate in the news. Hamas, as we know, has taken over the hospital. There have been reports that they were doing this for years. When I started writing, I wrote an article in Fathom Journal about the taking of hostages that I published last month, which you can find online. But I originally began to write about that story in November when we saw in the news CCTV footage of hostages on the morning of October 7th being brought into Al-Shifa Hospital and being surrounded by medical workers and scurried off, most likely into a terror bunker. We don't know what happened to them. And then later when some of the hostages, thank God, were released, and even in the past few days, many of them have been testifying how they were held in Gaza's hospitals. And this is also another atrocity. Every hospital in Gaza is closely operated by the international community, by UN agencies, by the ICRC, and by humanitarian aid organizations. And you cannot tell me that no one in these organizations knew what was going on with these terrorist organizations taking over these hospitals in Gaza, and how many of those people saw hostages being brought into their hospitals over the past few months and have said and done nothing about it. It is, and this is really something that, this is a more indicative problem of the humanitarian aid system in Gaza. This has been going on for 17 years, where Hamas has been allowed to steal aid, divert it to its terror campaign. And there's been what I've been calling an omerta from the international community refusing to speak about this. Even today, we heard nothing about that. We heard about Israel, forced starvation, not providing enough humanitarian aid, and we heard not a word about diversion of this aid. And so these issues are inextricably linked with the hostage issue, and we must continue to advocate on their behalf, but also for a complete overhaul of the humanitarian aid system in Gaza. It cannot continue the way it's been going on. Thank you very much.